to mass here when I was a kid. Didn't you go to church here too?
Forgive me, Father, for I've sinned.
What would you like to confess?
I've to hurt someone. I've to hurt someone severely.
What are you here for?
Revenge.
In quarantine, to be honest.
Where are you at? You got a nice background. You're like outside in the sun and shades.
I have lucked out. So I was in New York, and then one of my best friends was like, come out to California. You can't be in a like 2-bedroom apartment with a baby and everything. So me and my husband, we flew out here in the end of March. So we got here the 1st of April, and we've been here ever since. And there's like a farm, there's a horse over there who's very loud.
Wow.
You'll hear him in a minute.
So you're like on the countryside. You're kind of isolated and away from everything.
We're up in the Hidden Hills. Kanye West is my neighbor right now, so that's the most.
You're doing pretty well. Could be a lot worse, that's for sure.
I love that I'm like bragging about this. This is like not my life. This is just how what COVID has brought for me. Basically.
Well, embrace it while you can. Embrace it while you can. Well, fantastic. I'm so glad to talk to you. I've been a big fan of your work for a long time. So finally getting to connect, it's so cool.
Oh, thank you so much, man. That's really sweet of you to say.
Absolutely. So I went into this movie not looking at a trailer. I sometimes like to surprise myself. So I didn't read the synopsis. I had no idea what I'm gonna watch and see. And man, I was taken aback. I was thinking about this thing like all night, pretty much last night after watching it, because this movie struck me in so many different ways. First of all, where the hell has Orlando Bloom been this long? I mean, he's such a talented actor. Really reminded me how good he can be, if given the right material. And this movie, from what I learned, it came out a few years ago. We're getting the U.S. release now. But tell me how you were initially approached to this role and the script and this film when you heard about it a few years back.
Well, I was living in LA, and I was on a hiatus from a show that I was on called Salem. Mm-hmm. And when you're on hiatus from a TV show, you want a great indie to come along, but I think I was in a place where I was kind of a bit burnt out, and I was only going to do something that if it felt like it was really worth doing or something I wanted to explore. So this came through my English agent. He said, look, there was an actress attached who's fallen out. It shoots next week. Read the script, watch the director's other movie that they made. I watched this movie and I was like, whoa, this is like, if there was one thing missing at that time for me, it was like, there was a artistic integrity that I felt came across in their first movie. And I was like, I want to meet these guys and I want to work with them. So I did a self-tape. I then ended up FaceTiming or Skyping with them. And then a few days later, I was on a plane, and then I was shooting the movie. So it all happened very quickly. But for me, the script, there was a lot that mirrored things that had happened in my own life. And so I felt like it was a very easy role for me to tap into and use things that were, I guess, healing for me in some ways, because I was processing some things.
Really? So it kind of reflected your own personal experience too, because I felt like the performance was so authentic. It was almost scary at some points to see how natural and real it is. Because I mean, people go through these, tumultuous things in their lives, and sometimes you never know about it. And in terms of relationships, I could relate to it in a lot of ways too. When it comes to these kind of areas we sometimes are in relationships, and whether we know it's real or not, and just kind of floating around with someone, and one person not being able to communicate to each other what they really want. I felt that was like another big takeaway from it, how relatable and authentic it was, just the general sort of communication and relationship aspect. Was that also personal for you to embrace that? Because I felt both of you really were spot on when it came to that, not being able to communicate, and it just kind of showing it through actions that really didn't show the communication, what they were thinking,
Yeah, I think that a lot of that comes from Lud and Paul, the directors, and the environment that they built and allowed for us to play with. I mean, when when you have the luxury of, it's the opposite in TV. They want you to get all the lines out really quickly. They don't want anyone not talking when the camera's on them. Like, it's like when you watch TV, you notice it as well. There's very little room for pauses and things to happen without words. And this was the polar opposite of that. I felt like we'd set the cameras up and we would do the scene and we would do it again and we would play with the rhythm, I guess. And that for me is something that when I watched it, I thought it really works beautifully, because so much of the thing that I found really interesting about this story, and you know, we made it a few years ago as well, it's very difficult for anybody who's been abused to feel like they're going to be accepted, even more so if they've not been believed. And I think there's this whole idea of, for women, a lot of it is damaged goods. So you don't want to talk about it with a guy that you're with, because then there's a different perception, right? You're no longer pure. Someone's had like their, you know, there's a weird,
yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yep.
Yeah, and for men, there's a whole masculinity element, and I think Emma knows that there is something not right. But most people go through their whole lives who've been through something like this and they never tell anyone. They never do. And that I appreciated that they didn't wrap it up with a bow and have, you know, there was a different ending.
There's that's what I appreciate, because it seems like real life. In real life, you don't get these endings, you know, that perfectly wrap up, these cinematic endings. In real life, there's always this unknown, uncertainty. There's no, in a sense, direction that life can take you. And that's where, you know, when I was watching this movie, I didn't know what to expect. And it took me until like halfway to figure out what he was dealing with, because I'm just living in a moment. And I want to go to this. Actually, this is what kind of, the sex actually kind of made me, the scenes made me starting to put together the film. And I don't want to sound like no perv or anything, but that was actually an important part of the movie, the sex scenes, because I think you guys really communicated with both, what the characters didn't say through words, through actions, how it was, in a sense, uncomfortable watch, and it was very intense, but also unemotional, but a part of it was a bonding. Tell me about the sex scene, because I think that spoke volumes, and it really had me open up like what is actually going on in the movie, where it's going to. And a lot of times, you know, you just have sex scenes or whatever, nudity in a movie just for the sake of it sometimes, but this one was a very particular part of the story, and it helped me understand where the story is going. Tell me about those scenes, and was it uncomfortable to shoot, and how do you guys kind of discuss this? Because I was very curious about it, because I felt like it was an important element to really telling what's going on.
It was an ongoing discussion, and trying to capture this, exactly what you just said, the intimacy, and that these two people love each other, but that there's an emotional disconnect from him, and she is really trying. You feel like when they're kind of in the cellar of the pub, when they're stood there, and she's trying to she's like, let's look at each other, let's connect this way, and it's too difficult for him, because most of us know that there's moments when you are physically vulnerable in sex where your vulnerability just shows, right? And things come out of you. It's like, how many times have you said I love you to the wrong person when you're having sex? No, I'm just kidding. But
that's what I mean.
It does.
Reality comes in a moment. Yes.
And his truth and his vulnerability, I mean, he knows that she loves him, but it's too scary for him to confront it and it be something that is knowledge. As soon as he tells her, then it's something that he has to deal with, and she might say, oh, gross, or she might go, I don't believe you. You don't. That's what his mum did, you know? So the relationship to me felt painful for both parties.
Yep.
And I think it was a very interesting choice of Jeff's to have his pain almost mirrored in how he is treating her.
Totally.
Because you don't really want them to end up together, or there to be some like commercial movie bow on the end of it, because anyone who's ever been through something like this knows that's just not how it works. It's just not, it isn't. And so I feel like the ending that it was given, it felt more powerful in a way, and more symbolic of how he was dealing with it, rather than him sat down with his girlfriend and going, this is what happened to
Yeah, and it's like
me, and her
these
going, okay, we're gonna
right. This kind of inner turmoil doesn't heal overnight. You know, that takes years sometimes to just that realization of what's going on. And going back to that scene, I thought like a woman knows when something's off, especially when you're intimate. You know, you get that feeling, that intuition, especially in women. I mean, both the guys too. I totally would know when something's off, and you could tell through the reactions of it. And I felt like that was a great guiding point where the story led on. I was curious to hear, what was your reaction when you kind of read the script or you saw, because I thought it was one of the most intense scenes I've seen in movies in a couple years, that confessional. I thought it was so powerful. How did you react to reading it or being or hearing about it or seeing it on screen finally when it played out? Because I thought that was such a gripping scene that Orlando had in there. It was just unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, it read well on the page, but I don't think the gravitas, until I obviously wasn't in the scene, so I'd heard about it. So when I came and shot some stuff a bit later, everyone was talking about it, and then I saw it for the first time when I first watched the movie, like it was a year and a half ago. I first saw the movie.
Mm-hmm.
The thing with Orlando is where what he was looking for was a part like this, and something for him to show his own vulnerability through this character. And it's a really complex role, and I think he ticks all the boxes for me, of the moments of, you don't know how Malky's going to react the whole way through the movie, right? Like, he's kind of unreadable, but then there's moments where you're like, oh, he's going to lose it. No, he doesn't. So it keeps you on the edge
It's
of
a
your
roller
seat.
coaster. It's up and down.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a real credit to him, because I don't think we've seen his range in the other work that he's done.
You know, the thing I enjoy about your career, you've had this transition always from television to film to indies. You've been very well-rounded in your career. You've done a lot of different roles and different sorts of movies. What projects are you attracted to naturally? Because I really like the choices you've made. I mean, I love you on New Amsterdam. I love that show. And then seeing you in this film, it's such a raw character that you have, and such a really authentic portrayal of a person that's going through inner stuff that they're trying to come out with. What do you look for in roles? I'm curious, because it really comes out that you're so versatile and you can do a lot of different things. So I'm curious, how do you approach a show, a film, and a role?
Well, it depends on where I'm at, but as soon as I decided I wanted to be an actress, my biggest fear was that I would get pigeonholed.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over again. Otherwise, that's kind of the beauty of being an actor, is getting to become different people. And so for me, the way I've chosen stuff is, the time I was on Salem, which was a period fantasy drama, and I was like, I want to do something real and gritty. And now I feel like I'd be like, oh, I really want to do a period drama, because it's been a few years and I work on a medical show. So often whatever my last project has been, or what I'm currently working on, I'm looking for something. The next thing I want to be different. Like, I want to do a comedy. Like, after I finish this, I definitely want to do a comedy, because the actors who I resonate with, and for me, it's like a constant state of education. My job, like, I want to just get better and better and have as many strings to my bow as possible, is to keep putting yourself in things that frighten you a little bit, and you think, oh, I have not done this, it's not second nature to me, how do I navigate this?
Mm-hmm. Want to wrap it up by asking, I always love asking actors, director I ever talk to, what are some of their hobbies? Because I mean, obviously you're in the industry, you're consumed by your work. Sometimes when you're on set, I mean, that's kind of your world, but what are some things you like to do in your personal life to just kind of get away, clear your mind? Because in order to be, I always felt like, to be a good performer, you need to have a full, rich, regular person life in order to bring that to your work. And it seems that you do bring that element to it. So I'm curious, what are some of your kind of hobbies and interests that you like to do on an everyday basis when you get a chance to?
I mean, a lot of my time now is like family time with my daughter, and it's really, I would choose that over anything. But I'm artistic in nature, so anything creative sparks my joy. Like, during quarantine, I've done candle making, soap
Really?
making.
That's a thing?
This is my easel over here. I come out here and I do painting. So it's really, I just like making things, I think, in a creative way. I'm not great at painting, as I would show you, but I just like doing it.
you got to start somewhere, right? I mean, heck, even if it's just a hobby, right? No one's judging.
But yeah, it's like I find it switches my brain into a different mode that's like a tranquil. Most of the time I'm pretty anxious, I guess is the word. Like my brain works overtime. So if I
Hmm.
choose something like artistic, then my brain calms, gets quieter.
Fantastic. Well, I love knowing that. Love these little kind of tidbits that they give me some insight to who someone is. So really, really enjoyed. I mean, this is a kind of a sad movie in a lot of ways. It's a dark movie, but I really enjoy the performances. And I think stories like these are important to tell because there's a lot of people out there that could relate to this sort of matter. And, you know, when you tell human stories, I think that if there's one person out there that can relate to it or impact, I think you've done your job in that sense. And I think you guys did a fantastic job and really enjoyed that, as well as your other shows. I mean, it's great to see you just transform in so many ways.
Thank you. I think it's an interesting thing that you said that, because I think we all want stories that are comforting and make us laugh. Like those stories obviously have a place that we all want those, but art shouldn't always be comfortable. And
Hmm.
it, you know, some of the best art, like the Scream and things like that, you think about, and stories, they are and for me the movie is incredibly uncomfortable and sad and violent in places, but it's truthful.
Yep. And it's
So I think
resonating.
that, yes.
I always feel it whenever you come out watching a movie and you think about it, or you kind of compare your life and certain aspects of your life to what you've seen, that's a movie that makes an impact in some way. If a movie makes you think afterwards and kind of, you know, put your own perspective into it and, you know, relate in some way, I think that that's really means something and does its job in a lot of ways. And I think you guys did that. And, you know, even the way, you know, sometimes you look at relationships or sex, there's things you can take away from seeing that and inner, you know, ways to communicate. You know, you can learn in seeing people not being able to communicate, how you can communicate yourself, you know, or do a better job at it. So just
Mhm.
fantastic job by both of you. Looking forward to continued success for you and seeing you on New Amsterdam. Love the show and hopefully get to chat again.
Yes, absolutely. I would love to chat to you again. Maybe when the show comes out for season 3, we can do a little chat
Absolutely.
then.
Yeah. I'd love to do a podcast or another Zoom. That'd be great. Hopefully we can talk about that a little bit more positive more
Yes.
so.
Yes, let's do. Yeah, well, it won't be because we're coming back after the COVID stuff. So I think we're going
Well,
to incorporate that into the stories. So I don't know how, but it will be positive, hopefully. Some positivity.
there's always something you can take. Well, stay safe and much health and luck to your daughter and your husband too. So
Oh, thank you. And to you and your family.
thank you so much, Janet. Bye
Take
bye.
care. Bye bye.
You remember when I was 12, Mum? You said to me, "You're not right." I can see it in your face. Your face is tight.